Hi everyone, in this video I'll be sharing my process creating this key and shoe repair shop located in Osaka's longest shotengai, shopping arcade. Looking at the reference photo I took on location, I start out by sketching in the basic perspective. One of my favorite angles to draw buildings is from the corner perspective, so you really get a sense of dimensionality to the building. I'm working on arches, hot press watercolor paper at 300 GSM thickness and 100% cotton. My favorite pencil to sketch with is the Mitsubishi Uni HB pencil for its smooth, buttery texture and ease of erasing. Next step after roughing in the sketch with pencil is to refine the line work with colored pencil. In the past, I used to use ink pens, but now I much prefer using colored pencil, which can naturally give more variation in line thickness and color intensity. My artwork is usually packed with tiny details. If everything were to be outlined in exactly the same thickness, then there's no visual hierarchy, so I try to soften the line art when objects are further away. I'm constantly sharpening the pencil to get the finest point possible. I would recommend selecting a pencil with a hard lead over a soft lead like oil-based pencil crayons that are marketed for soft blending techniques. Watercolor paper is fragile and you want to avoid being too rough erasing to preserve its delicate fibers. I use a kneaded eraser, which is kind of like a sticky tack, blue tack type of texture. In drawing buildings, while it's important to get a level of accuracy in the perspective lines, I think having a less rigid approach brings more character to the artwork. I do this by not drawing with a ruler, and though it would be more accurate to grid the sketch, I choose to figure out the perspective lines more by intuition. Sometimes I will add in extra elements to make the piece more interesting or to better balance out the overall composition. It's important to remember making art is about deliberate artistic choices that are unique to the artist. I'm painting my own interpretation and I'm not replicating perfectly a photograph onto paper. In a scene like this one, the small details really bring a sense of life to the piece. I particularly think air conditioners, pipes, electrical wires, and lights really emphasizes the atmosphere of the scene. The compact composition and cluttered arrangement of objects is visually fascinating to me. As a kid, I loved the Search and Find or I Spy book series. Next, on to painting. Usually I will start with gouache paints first. Gouache has a really opaque, matte and smooth finish that I find grounds a painting, giving it a visual weight. I'm using a Stay Wet palette, which is an airtight container with a sponge bottom and a special palette paper on top. The sponge will keep the paints moist over a long period of time. One of the most essential colors to have in your gouache set is white. Unlike watercolors, using water to achieve lighter tones, gouache needs white paint to do that. As a general approach, I avoid using black straight out of the tube. Instead, using a mix of burnt umber and blues can create a blackish shade with more nuance, which seems to complement more naturally with other colors. I'm creating an off-white kind of shade here, and you can see it's actually comprised of many different colors. Using the cool blue tone and the pinkish peach tone along with the yellow ochre, I play around with the ratio to achieve the perfect temperature of color that I want. I tend to paint the walls, ground, and roof elements in gouache. Gouache tends to have less granulation than watercolors, meaning it is smoother with less uneven textures that the pigments will cause. It would be too visually distracting for the wall, such a large surface area of the painting, to be cluttered with uneven textures. It may work in some scenarios, but I want the focus of the piece to be on the small details and the animal characters instead. During this process, I expect the paint to cover up some of my outlines. I actually like that, as it adds a bit more line weight variation to the piece. I will go back in to re-outline the parts I feel need more definition afterwards. One thing to be mindful of is that gouache dries a slightly different tone than when wet. Dark colors will lighten up after drying, whereas light colors will darken. I'm using Holbein's traditional gouache, but I know that acrylic gouache is also very popular. I do like acrylic gouache too, but I find the pigments a bit heavier and stiffer than traditional, so for me it feels less smooth to paint with. Anyways, onto watercolors now. One of my favorite things to paint with watercolors are window interiors. Over time, I created my own techniques to this. I don't think I consciously learned this from anywhere, but the fundamental is using wet on wet technique as a base. I wet the area with pure water and then introduce colors that will dissolve and spread, almost like an ink stain. By playing around with the wetness of the paper, the next layer of paints can either be distinct or half blended into the previous layer. Window interiors is all about creating interesting shapes on the inside. So think about it in terms of light and dark. Light, where the window is reflecting light sources, and darker shapes hint at furniture placed behind the windows. In a street scene like this one, where it's referenced from life, I still want to convey a sense of my own creativity. The characters allow for a bit of storytelling in their actions. It doesn't have to be such a profound portrayal, but even in how the characters are standing, what their eyes are looking at, and what they're holding can really help to tie a piece together, like a snapshot in time of a lived-in experience. Oftentimes, I try to imagine, what would I be doing in such a place? For the smallest details, I switched to Copic markers. I like the ease of use and vibrant color selection. For white details, I use the Unisignal white gel pen. And that's the completed piece. I hope you enjoyed and you picked up a few tips along the way. Thanks for watching. Bye!